Hello, and welcome back to Lore for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to explore something truly fascinating. We're journeying into the vast snow-covered province of Skyrim, but not just to recount its history or catalogue its creatures. Tonight, we're diving deeper into something more personal, more introspective. We're exploring the psychology behind the choices you make in this legendary game, and what those choices reveal about human nature itself. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind wander through the pine forests and ancient Nordic ruins as we explore the deeper meanings behind every decision, every faction joined, every path taken in the land of the Nords. The weight of freedom. When you first emerge from the darkness of Helgen's caves, blinking in the sunlight with dragonfire still fresh in your memory, you're presented with something remarkable: complete freedom. The game doesn't force you down a particular path. There's no urgent timer ticking down, no parent NPC guiding your every move. Just you, the open road, and infinite possibilities stretching out in every direction. This moment is more significant than it might initially appear. In psychology, we call this kind of freedom analysis paralysis, or the paradox of choice. When presented with too many options, humans often struggle to make any decision at all. Yet in Skyrim, most players don't freeze. They choose a direction and start walking. They see a mountain and decide to climb it. They hear about a nearby town and decide to investigate. This tells us something profound about human psychology. When we're given freedom in a space that feels tangible and real, we don't shut down. We explore. We're naturally curious creatures, and Skyrim taps into that primal drive to discover what lies beyond the next hill, around the next bend in the river. But your first major choice reveals even more. Do you follow Hadvar, the Imperial soldier who tried to send you to your execution? Or do you follow Ralof, the Stormcloak rebel who was about to die beside you? This choice, made in the chaos of a dragon attack, often determines players' allegiances for the entire game. It's a perfect example of what psychologists call the mere exposure effect. We tend to favor things we're familiar with, even if that familiarity was born in strange circumstances. If you escaped with Hadvar, you met his uncle, saw the warmth of an Imperial-aligned family. If you went with Ralof, you experienced Nord hospitality and heard tales of Skyrim's independence. These brief exposures, lasting mere minutes of gameplay, can colour your perception of an entire civil war. It shows how our first impressions, even when formed under duress, have lasting psychological impact. The burden of destiny. Let's talk about the Dragonborn prophecy. You learn fairly early in your journey that you're not just another adventurer. You're the Dragonborn, a mortal with the soul of a dragon, destined to stand against Alduin the World Eater. You're special, chosen, different from everyone else in Tamriel. This concept taps into something deeply human, our desire to matter, to be significant. Psychologists have identified what they call personal fable, the belief that we're unique and special, particularly common in adolescence, but present throughout our lives. Skyrim validates this feeling. You are special in this world. You can do things no one else can. But here's what's fascinating. Many players resist this destiny. They ignore the main quest. They become thieves, merchants, homesteaders. They reject their supposed purpose in favor of writing their own story. This resistance to predetermined destiny reflects a fundamental human need for autonomy, the psychological drive to feel in control of our own lives. In real life, we often struggle with expectations placed upon us. Society says we should follow certain paths, achieve certain milestones. Family heritage might suggest we pursue particular careers. Skyrim gives us a safe space to explore what happens when we simply say no to destiny. And the game doesn't punish you for it. Alduin waits patiently on his mountain, while you spend years collecting butterfly wings and perfecting your alchemy. This patience, this lack of judgment, is therapeutically significant. The game says, you're special, you're needed, but you're also free to find your own meaning. It's a powerful message that resonates with our need for both significance and self-determination. The question of morality. Now, let's consider the moral choices Skyrim presents. Unlike some games with explicit good and evil paths, Skyrim operates in shades of grey. This ambiguity is psychologically complex and reveals how we construct our moral identities. Take the Dark Brotherhood questline. You're approached by a child who wants you to kill an orphanage headmistress who abuses the children in her care. Already, the game has complicated things. Murder is wrong. We're taught from childhood. But protecting children from abuse is good. What do? Many players kill Grelod the Kind. They justify it as vigilante justice, as protecting the innocent. This reflects what psychologists call moral disengagement, the process by which we convince ourselves that actions normally considered wrong are acceptable in certain contexts. We reconstruct the situation to preserve our self-image as a good person while doing something we typically condemn. But the game doesn't stop there. After killing Grelod, you're kidnapped by the Dark Brotherhood and forced to kill one of 3 prisoners to escape. Now you're truly trapped. The game has led you down a path where your initial good action has resulted in being forced to murder an innocent person. This is psychological entrapment. Having made one choice, we feel compelled to continue down that path to justify our earlier decision. Some players refuse. They kill Astrid instead and destroy the Dark Brotherhood. But many continue, rationalizing each murder. The contracts must be fulfilled. These targets are criminals anyway. It's just a game. Each rationalization is a window into how we maintain our moral self-concept, even when our actions contradict our stated values. The Thieves' Guild presents similar complexity. Stealing is wrong, yet the guild operates by a code. They don't kill. They don't steal from the poor. They have rules, structure, honor among thieves. This reflects how real humans construct moral frameworks, even in contexts society deems immoral. We seek rules and codes because they give us a sense of rightness, even when we're doing wrong. The power of belonging. Let's shift to something equally fundamental, the human need to belong. Skyrim is filled with factions, guilds and communities, each offering a different form of belonging. The choice of which to join, or whether to join any at all, reveals deep truths about what we seek in our social connections. The companions in Jorvaska offer brotherhood and martial prowess. They're warriors bound by honor and tradition. Players drawn to the companions often value strength, loyalty, and straightforward relationships. There's a clarity to the companions. You prove yourself in combat, you earn respect, you become family. For people who feel adrift in the complexity of modern social dynamics, this simplicity is appealing. But the companions also present a test, the beast blood. Will you become a werewolf to gain power and prove your dedication? This choice reflects the psychological concept of commitment and sacrifice. We value groups more when we've sacrificed for them. Initiation rituals, from college fraternities to military training, work on this principle. The harder the entry, the more we convince ourselves the group is worth it. Interestingly, many players embrace lycanthropy without hesitation. The power fantasy is strong. But later, some seek a cure, wanting to reclaim their humanity. This change reflects psychological growth and shifting values. What seemed exciting and empowering early in our journey can feel limiting once we've evolved. We outgrow even the identities we once desperately wanted. The College of Winterhold offers a different kind of belonging. Here, intellect matters more than physical prowess. The college attracts players who prefer solving problems with magic and wit rather than brute force. But there's something deeper happening here psychologically. The college is isolated, literally perched on a cliff separated from the suspicious town below. It's a refuge for those who don't fit in elsewhere. Many players who join the college report feeling like outsiders in other factions. The college validates intellectual curiosity and magical ability in a land that often fears and mistrusts magic. This reflects our real need to find communities where our particular gifts are valued. When we feel like misfits in the mainstream, we seek niches where we belong. The Thieves' Guild operates on different principles entirely. Here, belonging comes through loyalty to a found family of criminals. What's fascinating is how protective many players become of their guild brothers and sisters. Brynjolf, Vex, Delvin. These characters become important even though they're thieves. We see past their criminality to the bonds they share. This demonstrates cognitive dissonance in action. We hold two conflicting beliefs. Stealing is wrong, and these thieves are good people. To resolve this, we emphasize their positive qualities, their loyalty, their code. We humanize them. This is the same psychological process that allows people to maintain relationships with family members whose politics or behaviors they disagree with. Connection can transcend moral disagreement. The Dark Brotherhood, as mentioned, offers perhaps the darkest form of belonging. It's a family, truly. They call each other brother and sister. They live together. They operate by the rules of an ancient tradition. But they're also murderers. The cognitive gymnastics required to embrace the Brotherhood fully while maintaining a sense of moral self are remarkable. What draws players to the Brotherhood isn't necessarily the murder. It's often the acceptance. These are people who embrace you completely, who celebrate your dark talents rather than shunning them. In a world that often makes us hide our shadow selves, there's something psychologically powerful about a space that says, "Show us your worst, and we'll still call you family." Identity and roleplay. Let's talk about character creation and the identities we construct. When you first sit down to create your character, you make choices that go far beyond mere aesthetics. Are you a Nord, a native son or daughter of Skyrim? An Altmer, member of the race currently at war with the Empire? A Khajiit, member of a people so discriminated against they're not even allowed in most cities? These choices matter psychologically because they determine how we're treated and how we see ourselves in the game world. This connects to social identity theory, the idea that our sense of self is partially derived from the groups we belong to. When you choose to play a Khajiit, you're volunteering to experience discrimination. Guards make prejudiced comments. You're not allowed through city gates. You're treated with suspicion. Why would anyone choose this? Because experiencing otherness, even in a game, can build empathy and understanding. It's a safe way to glimpse what marginalization feels like. Studies have shown that experiences in games can influence real-world attitudes. Players who experience discrimination in-game often report increased sensitivity to real-world prejudice. Others choose races for power fantasies. Playing as a high elf means starting with strong magic abilities. Choosing an orc gives you physical dominance. These choices reflect our desires to embody traits we wish we had. Someone who feels weak might choose a powerful race. Someone who feels overlooked might choose a striking, unique appearance. Then there's the question of how you play your character. Do you stick to a role? Many players create elaborate backstories, limitations, rules for their characters. My character is an honorable warrior who never steals. My character is a pure mage who never wears armor. These self-imposed restrictions add meaning to our choices. This reflects what psychologists call self-concordant goals, goals that align with our deepest values. When we play according to a character concept we've created, we're more engaged and satisfied than when we simply do whatever's most efficient. The constraints we choose give structure and meaning to our freedom. But many players can't maintain these restrictions. They start as a noble paladin, but slowly bend their rules. First, they steal from bandits. They're criminals anyway. Then, from wealthy nobles, they can afford it. Then from anyone, justifying it however they can. This moral erosion, this slippery slope, mirrors how real people rationalize increasingly questionable behavior. What's remarkable is that most players don't start the game planning to become morally flexible. They have genuine intentions to play a certain way. But the game's incentive structures reward pragmatism over principle. That locked chest might contain something valuable. That house with no one home is easy to rob. Slowly, situation by situation, we compromise our stated values for practical benefits. This teaches us something important about moral character. We like to think our principles are fixed, that we know what we do in any situation. But context matters enormously. When the costs of doing right are high and the rewards of doing wrong are tangible, even the most principled among us bend. The allure of power. Skyrim is, among other things, a power fantasy. You start weak, attacked by a dragon, nearly executed. By the end, you're slaying dragons casually, one-shotting giants, carrying 15 swords and 40 cheese wheels without breaking a sweat. This progression taps into fundamental psychological needs. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs places safety near the bottom. It's basic, essential. Early in Skyrim, you're not safe. Wolves can kill you. Bandits are genuine threats. This vulnerability creates tension and engagement. As you grow stronger, you move from mere survival to self-actualization. You're not just trying to live, you're trying to become something greater. But power in Skyrim comes with interesting psychological nuances. First, there's the question of how you gain power. Do you level up smithing and create legendary weapons through honest craftsmanship? Do you join guilds and earn powerful gear through quests? Or do you exploit systems, using alchemy and enchanting loops to create absurdly powerful equipment. These choices reflect different psychological approaches to achievement. Working within intended systems shows respect for structure and rules. It's the slow, steady path. Exploiting systems shows creativity and a willingness to bend rules for advantage. Neither is wrong in a single-player game, but they reveal different cognitive styles. Some players deliberately avoid becoming too powerful. They refuse to exploit systems, use mods to make the game harder, or impose level caps on themselves. This might seem counterintuitive. Why make a game harder? But it reflects sophisticated psychological understanding. These players recognize that struggle and challenge create engagement. When you're too powerful, victories lose meaning. Tension evaporates. This connects to flow theory, developed by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Flow is the state of complete immersion we experience when challenge and skill are perfectly balanced. Too easy, and we're bored. Too hard, and we're anxious. Just right, and we lose ourselves in the experience. Players who manage their power levels are essentially trying to maintain flow. Then there's the question of what you do with power. Some players become benevolent. They help every beggar, solve every problem, save every village. Power is a responsibility. Others become tyrants, killing NPCs, causing chaos, using their strength for selfish ends. The game allows both, creating a moral laboratory. What's fascinating is that most players trend toward benevolence, even when given freedom to do otherwise. Why? Partly because games reward helping. You get quests, items, experience. But also because most humans have an innate inclination toward pro-social behavior. We feel good when we help. Even in a game with no real stakes, we choose kindness more often than not. This is hopeful. It suggests that when freed from real-world constraints and consequences, we don't immediately become monsters. Our default setting seems to be reasonably decent. Of course, some players do choose chaos and cruelty, and that's psychologically informative too. Games provide a safe outlet for impulses we'd never act on in reality. They let us explore our shadow selves without harm. The Civil War and political psychology. The civil war between the Empire and the Stormcloaks is perhaps Skyrim's most psychologically rich content. Both sides present compelling arguments. The Empire brings order, stability, cosmopolitan values. The Stormcloaks offer independence, cultural preservation, freedom from foreign interference. The game doesn't tell you which is right. This ambiguity is brilliant psychological design because it forces us to examine our own values. Players drawn to the Stormcloaks often value freedom and cultural identity highly. They see the Empire's ban on Talos worship as religious persecution and cultural imperialism. They view Ulfric Stormcloak as a freedom fighter standing against oppression. Players who side with the Empire tend to value order and pragmatism. They see the Thalmor as the real threat and the rebellion as dangerously weakening humanity's best chance of resistance. They view Ulfric as a selfish opportunist whose personal ambition endangers all of Tamriel. What's remarkable is how certain players are that their side is obviously right. This reflects confirmation bias, our tendency to seek information supporting our existing beliefs while dismissing contradictory evidence. Both sides have committed atrocities. Both have valid points. But once we've chosen a side, we tend to rationalize away our faction's flaws while emphasizing the opposition's failures. The Civil War also reveals tribalism in action. Once you join a side, NPCs from that faction become us, while the opposing faction becomes them. You celebrate your victories and mourn your losses differently than you would if you'd chosen differently. The conflicts become personal, even though they're fictional. Some players refuse to choose a side at all. They find the whole war distasteful, both sides flawed beyond redemption. This reflects a more complex moral framework, the recognition that sometimes all available choices are problematic. These players often express frustration that the game doesn't offer a third path, a way to reject both options. This desire for a third option reflects what psychologists call integrative complexity, the ability to recognize multiple perspectives and seek solutions beyond binary choices. It's a more sophisticated cognitive approach, though the game doesn't reward it. You must eventually choose or ignore the quest line entirely. The game also presents the Thalmor as puppet masters, secretly supporting both sides to keep humans weak and divided. This reveals conspiracy thinking, the appeal of believing hidden powers control events. It's psychologically comforting in a way because it implies someone is in control, even if that someone is malevolent. Random chaos is more frightening than directed malice. Home and belonging. Let's talk about something gentler now. Player homes. Skyrim allows you to purchase and furnish houses, build homesteads with the Hearthfire expansion, even join guilds that provide lodging. These spaces become surprisingly important to many players. From a psychological perspective, having a home base fulfills several needs. First, there's simple organization. You need somewhere to store your dragon bones and cheese wheels. But it's more than that. Decorating and personalizing a space, even a digital one, is an act of self-expression and investment. Players often spend hours arranging their homes. They place books on shelves, display weapons and armor, organize alchemy ingredients. This isn't efficient gameplay. It provides no mechanical advantage. But it satisfies our nesting instinct, our need to create personal space in the world. Psychologically, having a home base also provides what researchers call psychological anchoring. It's a place to return to, a stable point in your adventures. Many players develop routines. Come home, unload inventory, craft some items, sleep to get the well-rested bonus, then head out again. These rituals create rhythm and structure. The Hearthfire expansion, which lets you build custom homes, taps into even deeper psychology. Building something from raw materials is fundamentally satisfying. It's creation, progress you can see. Each visit, your house is more complete. This visible progression triggers reward circuits in our brains. And then there's the family aspect. You can marry in Skyrim, adopt children. Your spouse might prepare meals or run a shop. Your children might bring you gifts or ask for allowances. These interactions are simple, even repetitive, but many players cherish them. Why? Because they simulate care and connection. After adventuring, fighting, killing, exploring dangerous places, returning to a family provides contrast and emotional grounding. Someone is happy you're home. Someone cares if you're safe. Even though these NPCs have limited dialogue and simple behaviors, they fulfill a psychological need for mattering to someone. This is especially powerful for players who live alone or feel isolated in real life. The game provides a simulation of domestic life, of being part of a family unit. It's not real connection, but it touches the same psychological needs. We're social creatures who need to feel we belong, and Skyrim's home systems provide that in a gentle, low-pressure way. Some players take this very seriously, choosing spouses carefully, building appropriate homes, role-playing family life. Others largely ignore these systems. This variation reflects different psychological needs. Some people seek relationship simulation in games. Others find it immersion-breaking or uncomfortable. The collection impulse. Many players become obsessive collectors in Skyrim. They gather every book, even though reading them provides no mechanical benefit. They collect unique weapons they'll never use. They hoard ingredients, gems, anything rare or interesting. This collecting behavior is psychologically fascinating. At its root, collecting provides a sense of completion and mastery. Humans like sets. We feel satisfaction when we complete collections. This is why card games have rarity tiers and trading systems. The desire to complete sets is deeply embedded in our psychology. But Skyrim's collecting goes beyond sets. Many players collect for the sake of collecting, gathering objects with no clear completion point. They take every iron dagger from every bandit hideout. They can't pass a butterfly without catching it. This reflects a more compulsive aspect of collecting, the difficulty in passing up acquisition opportunities. This connects to loss aversion, a well-documented psychological bias. We hate losing things more than we enjoy gaining them. In Skyrim terms, leaving an item behind feels like a loss, even though we never had it. So we take everything, overburdened, but unable to leave treasure behind. The game enables this with unrealistic inventory systems. You can carry hundreds of pounds of equipment. Your house has unlimited storage. These generous systems remove real-world constraints, allowing our collecting impulses to run wild without consequence. Well, mostly without consequence. We do have to manage weight limits and storage space, but not realistically. Book collecting is especially interesting because books in Skyrim contain actual lore. Many players collect every book and read them all, diving deep into fictional history, theology, and culture. This reflects our love of world building and detail. We want to understand the context of our adventures, to feel like we're exploring a real place with real history. This desire for depth and meaning isn't unique to Skyrim. Humans create and consume complex fictional worlds because they satisfy our need for meaning-making. We're pattern-seeking creatures who construct narratives to make sense of experience. Detailed fictional worlds let us explore this tendency in safe, contained ways. Some players organize their collections meticulously. They have libraries where every book is properly shelved, armories where weapons are displayed by type. These organizational behaviors provide a sense of control and order. In a game where you're constantly facing chaos, dragons, wars, monsters, creating ordered spaces is psychologically soothing. Quest choices and moral ambiguity. Skyrim's quests often present moral choices, though rarely with clear good and evil options. Let's examine some of the more psychologically interesting ones. The quest, A Night to Remember, involves a drinking contest that leads to chaotic consequences you don't remember. You wake up far from where you started with no memory of what happened. This quest plays with our fear of losing control and our curiosity about our own suppressed impulses. What would we do if our inhibitions were completely removed. Most players find this quest hilarious, a welcome break from serious adventures. But it also touches something deeper, the question of who we really are beneath social conditioning. The chaos you caused while blackout drunk is still you, just unfiltered. The quest suggests, playfully, that we're all capable of absurd behavior if the right chemical switches are flipped. The forsworn conspiracy in Markarth forces you to investigate corruption and choose between bad options. Do you support the Silverblood family, who maintain order through oppression, or help the forsworn, who are freedom fighters to some and terrorists to others? There's no clean choice, just degrees of compromise. This quest illustrates moral injury, psychological distress from being forced to choose between bad options or from witnessing injustice you can't prevent. Players often express frustration with this quest because they want to fix things properly, but can't. The game won't let you solve the underlying problems, only choose which injustice to perpetuate. This frustration is psychologically important. It reminds us that some situations have no good solutions, only least bad ones. In real life, we often face complex moral situations where all choices have negative consequences. Skyrim occasionally forces us to sit with that discomfort rather than providing a clear hero path. Beyond Death in the Dawnguard expansion has you meet your past selves in the Soul Cairn. This surreal moment touches on psychological concepts of identity and continuity. Are you the same person you were? How have your choices changed you? The game makes this literal. Your past selves comment on how you've developed. Many players find this encounter moving because it provides reflection space. Games rarely encourage looking back at your journey. Usually, we're focused on the next objective. This moment asks, how have you changed? What choices have defined you? It's introspective in a way games rarely are. The entire Dawnguard DLC presents an interesting choice. Become a vampire lord or remain human and hunt vampires. This choice is mechanical. Vampires have different powers, but also thematic. It asks whether you'll embrace monstrous power or maintain humanity. Interestingly, many players try both, using separate characters or game saves. This reflects our desire to explore different identities and choices without permanent consequence. In real life, we can't test alternative paths. Games let us explore counterfactuals. What if I'd chosen differently? This ability to experiment with identity and choice is psychologically valuable. The weight of consequences, or rather, the lack thereof. One of Skyrim's most psychologically interesting aspects is how few permanent consequences your choices have. You can betray one faction and join another, kill important NPCs, and the world continues. Make terrible decisions and reload a save. This consequence-free environment is psychologically complex. On one hand, it removes the stakes that make decisions meaningful. If you can reload and try again, does your choice matter? Some argue this diminishes the psychological weight of decisions. But there's another perspective. The ability to explore without permanent consequence allows for psychological experimentation and growth. You can try being evil without becoming evil. You can explore choices you'd never make in reality. This sandbox approach to morality and identity has therapeutic value. Many players report that Skyrim helped them understand themselves better. By trying different approaches and seeing how they felt, they learned about their values and preferences. Someone might think they'd enjoy being a sneaky thief, but discover they prefer straightforward combat. Another might surprise themselves by enjoying the Dark Brotherhood's dark narrative. This self-discovery through play is psychologically significant. Games provide low-stakes environments for identity exploration. Adolescents especially benefit from this. Trying on different identities is a normal part of development, and games provide safe space for that exploration. However, the lack of consequences can also enable behavior patterns we'd rather not develop. If you play Skyrim by quick-saving before every conversation so you can reload if you don't like the outcome, you're training yourself in a problematic cognitive pattern. Real life doesn't work that way. Decisions have consequences we must live with. Some players recognize this and impose their own consequences. If their character dies, they delete that save and start over. This permadeath or hardcore approach makes decisions weighty again. Every combat is dangerous. Every choice matters. This self-imposed structure adds psychological depth to the experience. The modding community has created numerous mods that add consequences. Actions have reputation effects. Factions remember your betrayals. NPCs stay dead. These modifications suggest many players want more weight to their choices, even though they could simply play a different game. They want Skyrim specifically, but with meaningful consequences. Exploration and curiosity. Let's talk about why we climb mountains in Skyrim. Not because a quest tells us to, not because there's a marker on our compass, but because the mountain is there and we wonder what's on top. This exploratory behavior is fundamental to human psychology. We're curious creatures, drawn to novelty and discovery. Skyrim's open-world design taps directly into this drive. Every cave might contain treasure. Every ruin might hide ancient secrets. We explore because discovery itself is rewarding. Psychologists distinguish between different types of motivation. Extrinsic motivation comes from external rewards, quest markers, experience points, loot. Intrinsic motivation comes from internal satisfaction, the joy of discovery itself, the beauty of a vista, the satisfaction of solving a puzzle. Skyrim brilliantly balances both. Yes, there are quest markers and tangible rewards. But the most memorable moments often come from intrinsic motivation. You climb a mountain because you wanted to see the view. You explore a cave because you were curious. You help an NPC because their story touched you, not because the reward was valuable. This balance keeps players engaged for hundreds of hours. If the game were purely extrinsic rewards, it would feel like work. If it were purely intrinsic, it might lack structure. The combination creates a psychologically rich experience where both our desire for achievement and our love of discovery are satisfied. The environmental storytelling enhances this. You find a skeleton clutching a note, hinting at tragedy. You discover a hidden camp with evidence of what happened to its occupants. These stories aren't voiced or quest-linked. They're just there, waiting for curious players to piece together. This respects player intelligence and rewards attention. From a psychological perspective, this kind of environmental narrative is powerful because we create the story ourselves. We interpret the evidence, Fill in gaps. Imagine what happened. This active construction makes the story more meaningful than if it were simply told to us. We're not passive recipients, but active meaning makers. The verticality of Skyrim's world also matters psychologically. Mountains aren't just obstacles, they're invitations. Humans are drawn to high places. We want to see what's beyond, to gain perspective. This is probably evolutionary. High ground meant safety and visual advantage. But it's also metaphorical. We seek higher perspectives in life, greater understanding. When you finally reach a mountain peak after a long climb, the game often rewards you with a beautiful vista, a word wall, or a unique encounter. But even when there's nothing special, players often report satisfaction. The climb itself was meaningful. The view itself was reward enough. This reflects how journey can be as satisfying as destination. The dragons and facing fear. Dragons in Skyrim represent something psychologically primal: fear. Not the manageable concern of bandits or the calculated risk of difficult dungeons, but primal existential fear. Dragons are ancient, powerful, literally world-ending threats. When you first encounter dragons, they're terrifying. The music swells, the earth shakes, fire rains from the sky. You're small, fragile, probably going to die. This fear response is real. Players report increased heart rate, tension, excitement. Even though you logically know it's a game, your body reacts to the perceived threat. As you grow stronger, dragons become manageable, then routine, then almost trivial. This progression mirrors how we handle fears in real life. What once terrified us becomes, through repeated exposure and growing competence, just another challenge. Psychologically, this is exposure therapy in game form. Exposure therapy treats phobias and anxiety by gradually exposing people to feared stimuli in safe contexts. Skyrim does this accidentally. Early dragons are overwhelming, but you face them, survive, grow stronger. Eventually, you're confident enough to take them on without fear. You've been systematically desensitized. This has real-world applications. Studies show that games can help people manage anxiety by providing controlled exposure to stressful situations. The key is that the environment feels safe enough to engage with the stressor rather than avoiding it. Skyrim provides that safety while maintaining enough challenge to feel meaningful. The dragon shouts you learn represent internalized power. Each shout comes from defeating a dragon and absorbing its soul. Psychologically, this represents integrating feared aspects of ourselves. We don't just defeat dragons, we become part dragon. We incorporate their power into our identity. This mirrors Jungian psychology's concept of integrating the shadow self. Dragons represent chaos, destruction, power without restraint. By absorbing their souls, we integrate these dangerous aspects rather than simply destroying them. We become more whole, more powerful, but also more complex. The final confrontation with Alduin is psychologically significant. He's the World Eater, representing ultimate destruction, the end of everything. Facing him means confronting mortality and meaninglessness itself. Most players approach this fight with trepidation. It's not just another boss. It's the culmination of everything you've built toward. And when you defeat Alduin, there's often a sense of anticlimax. The world doesn't change dramatically. NPCs barely acknowledge your achievement. You've saved reality itself, but life continues much as before. This can feel disappointing, but it's also psychologically realistic. In real life, even our greatest achievements often feel anticlimactic. We expect fanfare and permanent change, but usually we just return to everyday life. Some players appreciate this understated ending. It suggests that heroism doesn't require recognition. You know what you did. That's enough. This reflects mature psychological development, finding meaning in achievement itself, rather than external validation. Time and escapism. We should address why people play Skyrim for hundreds or thousands of hours. What psychological needs does this extended engagement fulfill? First, there's simple escapism. Real life can be stressful, disappointing, or boring. Skyrim offers an alternative where you're powerful, important, free. This isn't necessarily unhealthy. Everyone needs breaks from reality. Games provide structured, engaging escapes that are generally safer than many alternatives. But there's more than just escape. Long-term engagement with Skyrim often reflects deep psychological investment. The world becomes familiar, comfortable. NPCs become known quantities. You develop routines and habits. This familiarity is psychologically soothing, especially for people whose real lives feel chaotic or uncertain. Skyrim also provides what psychologists call flow states, periods of complete absorption where time seems to disappear. You start playing, look up, and hours have passed. Flow states are psychologically valuable. They're associated with happiness, creativity, and life satisfaction. Any activity that reliably produces flow is worth engaging with. The game's structure supports extended play through multiple progression systems. You can max out combat skills, then switch to magic or stealth. You can complete one faction's quest line, then start another. There's always another goal, another achievement, another discovery. This prevents the psychological letdown that comes when you finish a game completely. However, we should acknowledge problematic play patterns. Some people use Skyrim to avoid dealing with real-life problems. They play compulsively, neglecting responsibilities, relationships, and self-care. This reflects psychological avoidance, using an activity to escape uncomfortable emotions or situations, rather than addressing them directly. The key distinction is between healthy engagement and problematic avoidance. Healthy engagement means gaming enhances your life. It provides relaxation, social connection, creative outlet, or genuine joy. Problematic avoidance means gaming replaces your life. You play to escape rather than to enjoy, and other areas of your life deteriorate. Most Skyrim players fall into healthy engagement. They play for enjoyment, take breaks, maintain other aspects of their lives. The game is a hobby, not a hiding place. But for vulnerable individuals, especially those dealing with depression, anxiety, or difficult life circumstances, the escape can become a trap. The modding community and personalization. Let's talk about something unique to PC gaming: mods. The modding community around Skyrim is vast, creative, and psychologically fascinating. Players don't just consume content, they modify, improve, and personalize their experience. This active engagement changes the psychological relationship with the game. Creating or using mods represents agency and ownership. You're not just playing the game as intended, you're shaping it to match your vision. This satisfies our need for autonomy and self-expression. When you install a mod that makes forests denser or cities more populated, you're saying, This is how I want my Skyrim to be. The types of mods people choose reveal their psychological priorities. Some focus on graphics, wanting the game to be as beautiful as possible. This reflects aesthetic appreciation and the desire for immersive beauty. Others focus on gameplay mechanics, wanting more challenging or realistic systems. This reflects preference for depth and complexity. Some mods add romance options, expanded relationships, more emotional NPC interactions. Players who seek these mods are often looking for deeper connection and emotional engagement. They want Skyrim to feel more human, more emotionally real. This isn't shallow. It reflects our fundamental need for relationship and emotional resonance. Then there are survival mods that add needs for food, water, warmth. These make the game harder, more demanding. Why would anyone want this? Because meaningful struggle creates engagement. When you must plan carefully, prepare thoroughly, and manage resources, every decision matters more. The psychological investment deepens. The modding process itself can be psychologically beneficial. Learning to install and manage mods requires problem solving, technical learning, and patience. Players who successfully build complex mod lists report feelings of accomplishment and competence. They've mastered something challenging, created something unique. There's also a strong community aspect to modding. Players share their mod lists, help each other troubleshoot problems, discuss which mods work well together. This collaborative problem solving builds connection and shared expertise. The community becomes part of the experience, not just the game itself. Some players spend more time modding than playing. They install mods, test them, adjust load orders, optimize performance, then do it all again. This might seem excessive, but it reflects a different form of engagement. For these players, the creativity and problem-solving of modding is as satisfying as playing. They're not avoiding the game, they're engaging with it differently. Character builds and psychological archetypes. The way players build their characters in Skyrim often reflects deeper psychological patterns and personal archetypes. Are you a heavily armored warrior, standing firm against any threat? A stealthy archer, observing from shadows and striking precisely? A mage, controlling reality itself through knowledge and will? These choices aren't random. They often align with how we see ourselves or how we wish to be seen. The warrior represents direct strength, courage, standing your ground. Players drawn to warrior builds often value straightforward approaches to problems. They don't hide or scheme. They face challenges head on. Psychologically, warrior characters appeal to people who want to feel strong and capable of protecting themselves and others. For someone who feels vulnerable in real life, playing an invincible tank can be deeply satisfying. You're literally armoring yourself against harm, creating physical invulnerability you don't have in reality. Stealth builds represent a different psychology. Archers and assassins work from shadows, striking without being seen. This appeals to people who value strategy, patience, and precision. There's also an element of control. You determine when and how combat begins. You're never caught off guard because you're always observing first. For people who feel exposed or vulnerable in social situations, playing a stealth character can be psychologically meaningful. You're invisible until you choose to be seen. You control engagement. This power fantasy is about agency and protection through strategic positioning rather than raw strength. Mage builds represent intellectual power. You don't need physical strength when you can reshape reality with thought and will. This appeals to people who value intelligence and creativity. Mages must think tactically about spell combinations, resource management, positioning. Combat becomes a puzzle to solve rather than a contest of strength. Playing a mage can be psychologically empowering for people who feel physically weak or who've been dismissed as just bookish. The game validates intellectual power as equal to or greater than physical power. Your worth comes from knowledge and skill, not muscle. Many players create hybrid builds, combining multiple approaches. This often reflects psychological complexity and reluctance to be defined by single attributes. I'm not just strong, I'm also cunning. I'm not just smart, I'm also brave. These hybrid characters represent integrated identities that draw on multiple strengths. The progression of character builds is also psychologically interesting. Many players start with one approach, then gradually incorporate others. You begin as a pure warrior, then start using a bit of magic for utility. Or you start as a sneaky archer, then develop close combat skills for when stealth fails. This evolution often mirrors personal growth, becoming more complex, more adaptable, more multifaceted. Some players meticulously plan builds before starting, researching optimal skill combinations and progression paths. This reflects a need for control and efficiency. They want to understand systems and optimize outcomes. Other players develop organically, taking skills that seem useful or interesting in the moment. This reflects comfort with uncertainty and spontaneous decision-making. Neither approach is better, but they reveal different psychological styles. Some people need plans and structure to feel comfortable. Others thrive on flexibility and discovery. Skyrim accommodates both, which is part of its broad appeal. The social aspects and shared experiences. Even though Skyrim is a single-player game, it has a surprisingly rich social dimension. Players share stories, compare experiences, offer advice. This shared experience creates community and connection around a fundamentally solitary activity. Online forums and communities dedicated to Skyrim are active years after release. Why? Because people want to share their experiences and hear others' stories. Did you know you can do this? Have you found this hidden location? What build are you playing? These conversations create shared cultural knowledge around the game. This social sharing serves several psychological functions. First, it validates our experiences. When we discover something exciting in Skyrim and share it, others' responses confirm that yes, this is cool, your discovery matters. This validation satisfies our need to be seen and understood. Second, sharing creates connection through common ground. When someone describes their Skyrim character or playstyle, others respond with their own experiences. Oh, I did something similar, or that's so different from my approach. These exchanges build community around shared interest. Third, collective knowledge building is satisfying. The Skyrim community has collectively discovered incredible detail about the game, hidden mechanics, obscure interactions, optimal strategies, lore connections. Contributing to this collective knowledge feels meaningful. You're part of something larger than yourself. Players also share emergent narratives, unique stories that arose from their specific playthrough. A giant launched me into the sky, and I survived. I accidentally killed an important NPC and had to complete quests differently. These stories are entertaining, but they also demonstrate the game's systemic depth and the uniqueness of each player's experience. YouTube and Twitch have added new dimensions to this social aspect. Watching others play Skyrim is remarkably popular. Why watch someone else play a game you could play yourself? Several psychological factors are at work. First, there's entertainment value. Skilled players or entertaining personalities make gameplay enjoyable to watch. But deeper than that, watching others play allows us to experience different choices and approaches without time investment. We see consequences of paths we didn't take, styles we didn't try. Second, there's learning. Watching experienced players teaches strategies and reveals possibilities. This educational aspect is valuable, but it also satisfies our general curiosity about how others approach problems. Third, there's parasocial relationship, the one-sided relationship viewers develop with content creators. Regular viewers feel like they know the streamer, even though the relationship isn't reciprocal. This can provide a sense of companionship, especially for isolated individuals. Challenge runs have become particularly popular content. Can you beat Skyrim without taking damage? What if you're only allowed to use wooden swords? These self-imposed limitations demonstrate mastery and creativity. Watching someone succeed at ridiculous challenges is entertaining, but it also inspires viewers to try their own creative approaches. Music, atmosphere, and emotional psychology. We'd be remiss not to discuss Skyrim's music and how it shapes the psychological experience. Jeremy Soul's soundtrack is iconic, and for good reason. The music doesn't just accompany gameplay, it shapes emotional experience and creates lasting associations. The main theme, Dragonborn, is instantly recognizable. Those opening notes trigger memories and emotions for millions of players. This is classical conditioning at work. The music has been paired with the Skyrim experience so many times that it automatically evokes associated feelings: adventure, nostalgia, epic scale. But the soundtrack does more than just create associations. It actively shapes how we feel moment to moment. The combat music increases tension and excitement. The exploration music creates wonder and peaceful contemplation. The town music provides comfort and safety. These emotional shifts are powerful, even though we're often not consciously aware of them. Music psychologists have identified how different musical elements affect emotion. Minor keys and dissonant harmonies create tension. Major keys and consonant harmonies create peace. Slow tempos calm us. Fast tempos excite us. Skyrim's soundtrack expertly manipulates these elements to guide our emotional journey. The use of silence is equally important. When you're exploring a quiet forest with only ambient sounds, wind, birdsong, distant waterfalls, the absence of music creates space for contemplation. Your own thoughts become part of the experience. This auditory breathing room is psychologically valuable, allowing processing and reflection. Many players report that Skyrim's music helps them relax or focus, even outside the game. They listen to the soundtrack while studying, working, or trying to sleep. The music has become divorced from gameplay, serving as an emotional tool in its own right. This reflects how deeply the soundtrack has connected with people's psychological needs for calm, focus, or inspiration. The ambient environmental sounds also contribute significantly to atmosphere. Crackling fires, howling wind, rain on stone, rushing water. These sounds create presence and immersion. They make the world feel alive and real. From a psychological perspective, this sensory richness reduces the cognitive distance between player and game world. When we're fully immersed, we're not consciously thinking, "I'm playing a game." We're simply experiencing a world. This immersion state is psychologically valuable because it provides complete absorption, a break from self-consciousness and worry. We're not thinking about ourselves. We're just being in this other place. The auroral sounds, the northern lights in Skyrim, have their own subtle audio, add to this otherworldly atmosphere. These small details show remarkable attention to creating a complete sensory environment. Psychologically, this completeness allows deeper suspension of disbelief and more profound immersion. Completion and perfectionism. Psychology. Let's talk about completionists, players who must do everything, find everything, achieve everything. This personality type reveals interesting psychological patterns around achievement and control. Some players can't leave a location until they've found every item, searched every container, read every note. They systematically clear the map of question marks. They max out every skill tree. This thoroughness reflects perfectionism and a need for completion. Psychologically, perfectionism comes in different forms. Adaptive perfectionism means setting high standards while remaining flexible and self-compassionate. Maladaptive perfectionism means rigid standards, harsh self-criticism, and anxiety about imperfection. Gaming can reveal which type someone tends toward. Adaptive perfectionists enjoy thorough play because the process itself is satisfying. They like the feeling of mastery and completeness, but they can also let go. If finding every single alchemy ingredient becomes tedious, they move on without guilt. Maladaptive perfectionists struggle more. They feel they must complete everything, even when they're not enjoying it. The unfinished feels intolerable. They might restart characters repeatedly, trying to do things right. The game becomes work, driven by anxiety rather than joy. Skyrim's achievement system feeds into these patterns. Achievements provide external markers of completion. You've done this, you've achieved that. For some players, achievements guide their play in positive ways, suggesting interesting challenges or content they might have missed. For others, achievements become obligations. They pursue achievements they don't actually want, because incompleteness feels wrong. This reflects how external reward systems can sometimes undermine intrinsic motivation. You stop asking, "What do I find interesting?" and start asking, "What haven't I checked off yet?" The game's quest log can create similar psychology. Many players report anxiety about their growing quest log. Every unfinished quest represents an obligation, a loose thread. This can transform play from joyful exploration to obligatory completion. Some players cope by ignoring certain quest types. I don't do radiant quests because they never end. This is psychological boundary setting, recognizing that some completeness is impossible and choosing where to invest effort. It's a healthy response to systems designed to generate infinite content. Others embrace the impossibility. I'll never finish everything, so I'll just do what interests me. This reflects acceptance and present-focused engagement. The goal isn't completion, but enjoyment of the journey. This is psychologically healthier, but harder to maintain in achievement-focused gaming culture. The modding community has even created tracking mods that show precisely what you've collected, discovered, or completed. These tools serve completionists, but can also exacerbate problematic patterns. When you can track every single item in the game, the pressure to collect everything intensifies. The stealth archer phenomenon. There's a running joke in the Skyrim community. I tried to play a different build, but I became a stealth archer again. This phenomenon, the overwhelming tendency for diverse characters to evolve into sneaky archers, reveals interesting psychological patterns. Why do so many players gravitate towards stealth archery regardless of initial intentions? Several psychological factors are at work. First, it's effective. Stealth multipliers create massive damage. You can eliminate threats before they reach you. From a pure efficiency standpoint, stealth archery dominates. But it's more than efficiency. Stealth archery also provides psychological safety. You control engagement. You observe before acting. You eliminate threats without risk. For players with anxiety or need for control, this playstyle is deeply appealing. There's also a learning curve issue. Early in the game, many builds feel weak and frustrating. You run out of magicka. Enemies overwhelm you in melee, but stealth archery works consistently from early levels. Psychologically, we gravitate toward what works, what feels good. Early positive reinforcement shapes long-term behavior. The game's design inadvertently encourages stealth archery. Dungeons often have elevated positions perfect for sneaking. Enemy AI is exploitable with stealth. Arrows are plentiful. The path of least resistance leads toward becoming a stealth archer. This reveals how game design shapes player behavior more than we might think. We like to believe we freely choose our playstyles, but we're heavily influenced by what the systems reward. This is true in games and in life. We're shaped by incentive structures, often without realizing it. Some players fight the stealth archer tendency, deliberately avoiding stealth and archery skills. This requires conscious effort and often feels less optimal. But these players value variety and challenge over efficiency. They're willing to make the game harder to preserve diversity of experience. This reflects different values around gaming. Some players optimize. They want the most effective approach. Others diversify. They want varied experiences, even at the cost of efficiency. Neither is wrong, but they represent different psychological relationships with games and goals. The stealth archer meme itself has become part of Skyrim's culture. Players joke about it, make references, share their failures to avoid the archetype. This shared humor creates community bonding. We laugh together about our predictable behavior, finding connection in our common patterns. Nostalgia and return. Many players return to Skyrim repeatedly, years after their first playthrough. This pattern of return and nostalgia is psychologically rich. Why do we return to familiar games rather than always seeking new experiences? Nostalgia is powerful. When we return to Skyrim, we're not just playing a game. We're revisiting a time in our lives. The game becomes associated with who we were when we first played it. Returning evokes memories of that person, that period, those feelings. This can be bittersweet. The game reminds us how much we've changed. We're not the same person who first climbed the throat of the world. We've aged, changed, grown. The game is the same, but we're different. This contrast highlights the passage of time in poignant ways. But nostalgia also provides comfort. In a changing world, Skyrim remains constant. Whiterun still sits beneath the mountain. The same NPCs say the same things. This constancy is psychologically soothing. It's a stable point in life's flux, a place that remains as we left it. Psychological research shows nostalgia serves several functions. It boosts mood, increases feelings of social connection, provides meaning and continuity in life. Returning to beloved games taps into all of these. We feel connected to our past selves and to the community of players who share this experience. Some players report that returning to Skyrim during difficult life periods, stressful job, relationship troubles, illness, loss, these challenges drive people back to familiar comfort. Skyrim becomes a psychological refuge, a place where you know the rules and can feel capable and in control. This use of games for emotional regulation is common and generally healthy. Everyone needs coping mechanisms, and familiar games are relatively benign ones. They provide structure, achievement, and escape, without the downsides of many other stress responses. However, there's a balance. If returning to Skyrim means avoiding necessary life challenges, it becomes problematic. The key is whether the game helps you cope so you can face difficulties, or whether it becomes a way to indefinitely avoid them. Many players also return to Skyrim because new mods or updates have transformed the experience. The base game becomes a platform for infinite variation. This transforms nostalgia. You're returning to something familiar yet new, combining comfort with novelty. This balance of familiarity and novelty is psychologically optimal. Pure familiarity becomes boring. Pure novelty is overwhelming. The sweet spot, familiar foundations with new elements, is where engagement thrives. Skyrim's modding community ensures this balance can always be achieved. The Daedric Princes and Shadow Psychology. The Daedric Prince questlines deserve special attention. These morally complex quests often require disturbing actions in service to powerful, immoral entities. Why do players engage with this content, and what does it reveal psychologically? The Daedric Princes represent various aspects of human psychology, often the darker or more chaotic elements. Molag Bal represents domination and corruption. Mehrunes Dagon represents destruction and change. Sheogorath represents madness and creativity. These are archetypal forces, representing aspects of the human psyche. Engaging with Daedric quests means confronting these shadow aspects. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of acknowledging our shadow selves, the parts we'd rather deny. The Daedric Princes externalize these shadows, allowing us to interact with them safely. When you complete a quest for Molag Bal, you're engaging with themes of power and cruelty. The game doesn't force you to approve or internalize these values, but it lets you explore them. This exploration can be psychologically valuable, understanding dark impulses without acting on them in reality. Some players refuse Daedric quests on moral grounds. They won't participate in cruelty or corruption, even in fiction. This reflects strong moral boundaries and unwillingness to compromise values even in fantasy. It's a coherent psychological stance. Fiction still engages our moral reasoning, and some boundaries shouldn't be crossed even imaginatively. Others complete these quests while maintaining psychological distance. I'm doing this for the artifact, not because I agree with it. This compartmentalization allows engaging with dark content while preserving moral self-concept. We tell ourselves it's pragmatic, not truly our choice. Still others find genuine enjoyment in the transgressive nature of these quests. Not because they're cruel in real life, but because fiction provides safe space to explore taboo thoughts and actions. This is similar to why people enjoy horror movies or dark fiction. It's a controlled way to engage with scary or forbidden territory. The most psychologically interesting Daedric quest might be Sheogorath's The Mind of Madness. You enter Pelagius, the mad's troubled psyche, and must resolve his psychological torments. This quest literalizes mental illness and treatment, showing fears, paranoia, and self-loathing as external enemies to be confronted. Many players find this quest memorable because it's surreal and psychologically resonant. Pelagius's struggles, fears of inadequacy, anger issues, nightmares, are universally relatable. Helping him confront these inner demons mirrors psychological therapy and growth. The reward from this quest is the Wabbajack, a staff of pure chaos that randomly transforms targets. Symbolically, you've helped bring some order to madness, and in return, you receive controlled chaos. Madness you can direct and contain. This is psychologically sophisticated design, the end game and purpose. Let's talk about what happens after you've defeated Alduin, become head of every guild, bought every house, and maxed out your character. What happens when there are no more clear goals? Many players reach this endgame and feel a strange emptiness. The game continues. Skyrim doesn't end, but the structure of progression is gone. No more levels to gain, no more major quests to complete. You're all-powerful in a world that has nothing left to challenge you. This mirrors a real psychological phenomenon, the letdown after achieving major goals. We work towards something for so long that when we finally achieve it, we feel lost. Now what? Without the next goal, we lack direction and purpose. Skyrim's endgame can trigger this feeling. Some players start new characters at this point, beginning the progression cycle again. This reflects our need for growth and challenge. Starting fresh, you're weak again with goals ahead. The journey matters more than the destination. Others create their own goals. I'll collect one of every item. I'll build the perfect house. I'll create elaborate stories for my character. This self-directed goal setting is psychologically sophisticated. You're creating meaning rather than consuming it, taking ownership of your experience. Still others simply stop playing. The natural endpoint has arrived. They've experienced what Skyrim offers. There's no judgment in this. Knowing when something has run its course is healthy. Not everything needs to last forever. But many players struggle with the endgame because they don't want to stop, but have no clear reason to continue. The game has become a comfortable habit, a familiar space, but without goals, engagement feels hollow. This teaches us about the importance of purpose. We need reasons to act, goals to pursue, even in leisure activities. This is where modding becomes particularly valuable. Quest mods, new lands, additional storylines, these provide fresh goals and renewed purpose. The game becomes effectively infinite. Psychologically, this prevents the end-game emptiness by ensuring there's always something new to discover. choice paralysis and decision fatigue. We should address something many players experience but rarely discuss: the overwhelming nature of Skyrim's freedom. With so many options, so many paths, so many decisions, players can experience genuine psychological fatigue. Decision fatigue is a well-documented phenomenon. Making choices depletes mental energy. The more decisions we make, the more our decision-making quality deteriorates. In daily life, this is why successful people often routinize small decisions, wearing the same clothes, eating the same breakfast, to preserve mental energy for important choices. Skyrim presents constant decisions: which quest to pursue, which skills to develop, which items to keep, which faction to join. For some players, this freedom is exhilarating. For others, it's exhausting. They freeze, unable to choose, or they flit between options without commitment. This paralysis often manifests as character restart syndrome, starting new characters repeatedly without ever finishing playthroughs. The early game, where choices feel fresh and consequences are distant, feels good. But as the character develops and choices accumulate, anxiety builds. Starting over provides temporary relief, a clean slate, renewed possibility. But this pattern prevents ever experiencing satisfaction of completion or deep engagement. You remain perpetually in the early game, never seeing how choices play out long term. This reflects avoidance of commitment. Keeping all options open means never truly choosing anything. The psychological solution is accepting that choosing one path means not choosing others, and that's okay. You don't need to experience everything in one playthrough. You can play again. Or you can simply accept that you won't see everything, and that's fine. This acceptance reduces anxiety and allows deeper engagement. Some players cope with choice paralysis by imposing external structure. They follow build guides, stick rigidly to character concepts, or roll dice to make decisions. These structures reduce the burden of choice while maintaining engagement. It's a healthy compromise. You're still playing, but you've offloaded some decision-making. The NPC relationships and parasocial bonds. Let's talk about the NPCs of Skyrim: the followers, the merchants, the quest givers. These digital people, despite their limitations, often form surprisingly strong psychological connections with players. Certain followers become beloved. Lydia, with her sarcastic, "I am sworn to carry your burdens." Serana, with her complex backstory and unique commentary. Jazago, with his confident enthusiasm. These characters, though programmed and limited, feel like companions. We develop parasocial relationships with them. Parasocial relationships are one-sided relationships, where one party feels connection while the other is unaware of their existence. We develop these with celebrities, fictional characters, and yes, video game NPCs. These relationships satisfy real psychological needs, even though they're not reciprocal. Why do we care about NPCs who aren't real and can't truly know us? Because our brains are wired for social connection. We're pattern recognition machines that see agency and personality everywhere. NPCs have just enough complexity. They react to us, comment on situations, have preferences to trigger our social circuitry. Many players report feeling genuine distress when followers die. Some reload saves to prevent these deaths, even though it's tactically disadvantageous. This isn't silly or childish. It reflects how completely our emotional systems engage with sufficient social cues, regardless of whether the entity is real. The marriage system taps into even deeper psychological territory. You can marry various NPCs, and while the system is simple, they move into your house, occasionally give you money or food, and have limited dialogue. Players often take it seriously. They choose spouses carefully, consider compatibility, feel genuine affection for their virtual partners. This might seem strange, but it reflects how we use narrative and simulation to meet emotional needs. A digital spouse who greets you warmly when you come home, who's always there, who never argues or disappoints. This provides a simplified version of companionship that can be psychologically comforting. For lonely players especially, these virtual relationships can be meaningful. They're not replacements for real relationships, that would be concerning, but supplements, small sources of connection in lives that might lack sufficient social contact. Used this way, they're harmless and possibly beneficial. However, if someone prefers virtual relationships to real ones, or if virtual relationships actively prevent pursuing real ones, that indicates problematic patterns. The key is whether game relationships enhance your emotional life or replace necessary human connection. The community around NPCs is also psychologically interesting. Players create elaborate headcanons about characters, write fan fiction, create art, discuss personalities and motivations. This creative engagement transforms NPCs from game mechanics into cultural artifacts with shared meaning. This collective meaning-making is deeply human. We're storytelling creatures who create and share narratives. NPCs provide frameworks for stories, and we fill in the gaps, creating rich narratives from limited information. This isn't delusional. It's imaginative engagement, the same impulse that drives all fiction and art. The Thieves Guild and moral flexibility. Let's examine the Thieves Guild questline more closely, as it presents fascinating moral complexity. The guild has fallen on hard times due to a broken oath. As you progress, you discover the problem and work to restore the guild's luck by honoring an ancient pact with Nocturnal, Daedric Prince of Night and Luck. This storyline is psychologically rich because it presents crime with honor. The Thieves Guild has rules. Never kill, honor your agreements, protect the guild. They're criminals, but principled ones. This moral framework allows players to engage in theft while maintaining positive self-concept. We see this rationalization in action. I'm not a bad person. I have a code. I only steal from those who can afford it. I protect my guild family. These are the same psychological processes that allow real-world moral compromise while maintaining self-image as good people. The guildmaster, Mercer Frey, betrays these principles. He's killed, stolen from the guild, broken sacred oaths. This makes him the villain despite being a thief among thieves. The message is clear. Having and keeping a code matters more than legal status. Honor among thieves is still honor. Many players rationalize joining the Thieves Guild by emphasizing this code. They don't see themselves as mere criminals, but as principled outlaws. This reflects cognitive dissonance resolution. We adjust our frameworks to allow actions while preserving positive self-concept. The restoration of the guild feels satisfying, not just mechanically, but morally. You're not just becoming more powerful. You're restoring order, honoring ancient pacts, rebuilding something that had fallen. This gives moral weight to criminal activity, allowing us to feel good about questionable actions. Carlia, the wrongly accused thief seeking to clear her name, becomes a sympathetic figure. Her quest for justice and truth, even though she's a criminal, triggers our empathy. We want to help her because her cause is righteous, even if her methods are not. This shows how motivation and context shape moral judgment. The choice to become guild master and restore the guild to greatness allows players to feel they've improved something. You've taken a struggling criminal organization and made it prosperous and principled. This transforms crime into restoration, making the immoral feel purposeful and even noble. The Companions and Warrior Culture. The Companions questline explores warrior culture and the complications of power. These honorable fighters discover their leadership has been cursed with lycanthropy. The beast blood grants power, but costs humanity. This is psychological allegory about the price of strength. Warrior culture in the Companions emphasizes honor, courage, direct action. Problems are solved through combat. Strength and bravery are paramount virtues. For players drawn to this, the Companions validate straightforward, physical approaches to challenges. But the beast's blood complicates things. Becoming a werewolf grants incredible power. You transform into an unstoppable killing machine. But you lose control. You can't rest peacefully. Your humanity is compromised. This is the classic Faustian bargain. Power at a price. Many players embrace lycanthropy eagerly. The power is intoxicating. Running through forests as a massive werewolf, tearing apart enemies, feeling invincible, it's a pure power fantasy. Psychologically, this reflects our desire for primal strength, for freedom from civilized constraints. But some players later seek a cure. The initial thrill fades, and the limitations become annoying. You can't get rest bonuses. The transformations are inconvenient. What seemed empowering becomes restrictive. This mirrors how real-life choices that initially seem purely positive often have hidden costs. The faction leader's relationship with the beast blood is telling. Some embrace it fully. Others see it as a necessary tool. Still others regret it. These different relationships model different responses to morally complex power. There's no single right answer, just choices with consequences. The climax involves defeating the witches who cursed your leaders and avenging Kodlak Whitemane's death. This is emotionally resonant because Kodlak was a father figure, a mentor. His death feels personal. Avenging him taps into primal drives for justice and loyalty to fallen leaders. The option to cure yourself of lycanthropy is psychologically significant. The game doesn't force you to remain cursed. If you decide the power isn't worth the cost, you can reclaim your humanity. This respects player agency and acknowledges that what seemed desirable initially might not remain so. The College of Winterhold and Intellectual Identity. The College of Winterhold questline explores themes of knowledge, power, responsibility, and intellectual identity. As a mage's college, it attracts scholars and spellcasters, those who solve problems through knowledge rather than strength. The college is literally isolated on a cliff, separated from Winterhold by a collapsed bridge. This physical isolation mirrors social isolation. The college is distrusted by Nords who fear magic. This creates an outsider identity. College members are brilliant but marginalized, powerful but feared. For players who identify as intellectuals or who've felt socially excluded for their interests, this resonates deeply. The college says, your intellectual gifts are valuable here. You belong among us. This validation is psychologically powerful, especially for people who felt out of place in physical, strength-oriented environments. The quest line involves discovering an ancient magical artifact of immense power, the Eye of Magnus. Various factions want it for different purposes. You must navigate these conflicts while uncovering the truth. This emphasizes investigation, learning, and intellectual problem-solving over brute force. Ancano, the Thalmor agent who betrays the college, represents the dangers of knowledge without wisdom. He understands magical theory, but lacks ethical grounding. His pursuit of power without consideration for consequences makes him villainous. This emphasizes that intellect alone isn't sufficient. Wisdom and ethics matter too. The Archmage Savos Aren's backstory reveals another cautionary tale. He and his friends delved into dangerous knowledge, and most died horribly. Savos survived but carried guilt for decades. This warns about the costs of seeking knowledge without proper caution. Some doors shouldn't be opened. Some knowledge is too dangerous. Despite these warnings, the college generally portrays intellectual pursuit positively. Magic is a tool for understanding and shaping reality. Study is valuable. Knowledge brings power and freedom. For players who value learning, this validation feels meaningful. Becoming Archmage happens quickly, which some players find unsatisfying. You're still relatively inexperienced when thrust into leadership. This could be seen as poor pacing, but it also reflects a harsh truth. Sometimes responsibility arrives before we feel ready. Leadership isn't about having all answers, but about accepting responsibility when necessary. The college's tolerance for different magical approaches, destruction, conjuration, illusion, restoration, shows intellectual diversity. There's no single right way to pursue magical knowledge. This pluralism reflects healthy intellectual culture where different methods and perspectives coexist. The Bard's College and Creative Expression. The Bard's College is Skyrim's shortest faction questline, but it touches on themes of creativity, tradition, and the preservation of cultural memory. Bards are storytellers, preserving history through song and tale. This is about art's role in society and identity. The college's main quest involves recovering King Olaf's verse and burning his effigy. This tradition celebrates free expression. The bard who wrote the verse mocked the king, and generations later, that irreverence is ritualized. Art can challenge power, and this should be celebrated rather than suppressed. For players who value creative expression, the Bard's College validates artistic pursuits in a world dominated by warriors and mages. You don't need to be the strongest or most magically gifted to matter. Storytelling and song have their own power, cultural and memorial rather than physical. The college is also remarkably accepting. They take you in quickly, teach you freely. There's little conflict or drama here. This creates a sense of artistic community as supportive rather than competitive. For players who've experienced toxic creative environments, this idealized artistic community can be refreshing. However, the quest line's brevity disappoints many players. There's potential here for deeper exploration of art, creativity, and cultural memory that remains undeveloped. This might reflect how society often undervalues artistic pursuits compared to more obviously practical paths. Psychologically, the Bard's College serves as a haven for players who don't fit other factions. Too peaceful for the companions, insufficiently magical for the college, not interested in crime or assassination, but they appreciate culture, music, and story. It's a place for gentler souls in a violent world. The absence of performance mechanics is notable. You join a musical college but never actually perform. This is a missed opportunity, but also reflects how games often struggle to represent artistic creation meaningfully. Combat and magic are easier to systematize than artistic performance. Environmental storytelling and discovery. Beyond quests and factions, Skyrim excels at environmental storytelling. Narrative conveyed through environment rather than explicit telling. This respects player intelligence and rewards attention, creating psychologically satisfying discovery. You find a skeleton clutching a note confessing to murder, a campsite with bodies arranged suggesting what happened, a hidden room with evidence of someone's secret life. These stories aren't voiced or quest-marked. They just exist, waiting for observant players to piece together. This environmental narrative is psychologically engaging because it requires active interpretation. You're not passively receiving story. You're constructing it from evidence. This cognitive engagement creates deeper memory and satisfaction. We remember stories we've worked to understand better than stories simply told to us. The environmental stories often have melancholy or dark tones. You find evidence of tragedies, failures, quiet deaths. These aren't epic tales, but human-scale sorrows. This grounds the fantasy world in relatable emotion. Magic and dragons exist, but people still suffer small, recognizable tragedies. For players who take time to notice and interpret these stories, Skyrim feels richer and more real. Every location has history. Every ruin was once lived in. This attention to detail rewards patient, observant players while remaining invisible to those who rush through. This creates interesting psychological differentiation between player types. Some want clear objectives and efficient completion. Others want to explore every corner and imagine every story. Neither is wrong, but they represent different cognitive styles and what we find rewarding. The environmental storytelling also serves as meditation space. When you stop to read all the books in a destroyed home, imagine what happened here. You're pausing. You're reflecting. This contemplative play provides psychological value beyond mechanical progression. Some of the environmental stories are deliberately ambiguous. You find evidence but can't be certain what happened. This ambiguity respects the player's imagination. You get to decide what the story means, filling in gaps based on your interpretation. This creative participation is engaging. The weight of being Dragonborn. Let's return to the central identity question. What does it mean psychologically to be told you're special, chosen, different from everyone else? The Dragonborn prophecy creates instant significance. You matter cosmically. You're destined for greatness. This is deeply appealing to our ego and our need for meaning. We want to believe we're here for a reason, that our existence has purpose beyond mere chance. But this specialness also isolates. Only you can absorb dragon souls. Only you can use Thu'um freely. Only you can fulfill the prophecy. This isolation is double-edged. You're unique, but alone in your uniqueness. Others can't truly understand your experience. This mirrors real experiences of exceptional ability or unusual life circumstances. People with rare talents or unusual backgrounds often feel simultaneously special and isolated. They stand out, but may struggle to find peers who understand. Skyrim captures this psychological complexity. The game also explores how others react to your special status. Some NPCs are awed, others are jealous or dismissive. Some try to use you. This range of reactions feels psychologically realistic. In real life, achievement and specialness trigger varied responses from others, not universal admiration. The Greybeards represent one response to power: withdrawal and contemplation. They possess incredible power, but use it minimally, living in isolation focused on philosophical understanding. This models restraint, the choice to not exercise all the power you possess. Contrasting this, the Blades want you to actively use your power to hunt dragons and shape history. They see power as obligation. If you can act, you must act. This creates tension between contemplative and active approaches to ability and responsibility. Most players lean toward the Blade's activist approach. You hunt dragons, involve yourself in conflicts, use your power to shape events. This reflects common beliefs about responsibility and ability, that capability implies obligation to act. With great power comes great responsibility, as another franchise says. But some players sympathize with the Greybeard's restraint. Power doesn't obligate action. You can choose quiet lives, even when capable of greatness. This is a valid psychological stance. Not everyone must maximize their impact. Sometimes withdrawal and contemplation are appropriate responses. The Dragonborn identity also raises questions about destiny versus choice. Are you doing these things because you must, or because you choose to? The game leaves this ambiguous. You're prophesied to defeat Alduin, but you could theoretically ignore this. Does that make your eventual choice to confront him more or less meaningful? Psychologically, we struggle with similar questions. How much of our lives is determined by genetics, upbringing, circumstance, and how much is free choice? Skyrim doesn't answer this. It presents both destiny and choice as real, leaving players to reconcile the tension. The Dark Brotherhood and moral extremes. We must give special attention to the Dark Brotherhood, Skyrim's most morally challenging faction. This is a family of assassins who murder for money, bound by ancient traditions and the Night Mother's will. Joining requires genuine moral compromise. The storyline begins with that abused orphan and progresses to kidnapping and forced murder. If you continue, you join a family of killers who treat murder as normal, even sacred work. They're not conflicted or tortured. They genuinely enjoy and take pride in their work. This presents stark moral choices. Can murder be justified? Can killers be family? Can tradition and ritual sanctify killing? The game doesn't judge your choices explicitly, but these questions weigh on players. Some refuse to join, killing Astrid instead and destroying the Brotherhood. Others dive in fully. What's psychologically fascinating is how the Brotherhood makes murder palatable through several mechanisms. First, most targets are presented as deserving death in some way. They're criminals, abusers, corrupt officials. This allows moral justification. You're removing bad people. Second, the contracts emphasize professionalism and ritual. You're not mindlessly killing, but following a sacred tradition with rules and meaning. This structure provides cognitive framework to justify participation. It's not chaos. It's ordered, meaningful work. Third, the family aspect humanizes the killers. These aren't monsters. They're people who care for each other, laugh together, support one another. When you care about characters, you want to join their community, even when that community does terrible things. This is how real people rationalize participation in harmful groups. The betrayal by Astrid and the destruction of the sanctuary creates interesting psychological dynamics. Your family is betrayed and murdered. Even though they were assassins, you likely feel genuine grief and anger. The desire for revenge is powerful. You want to make the traitors pay. This demonstrates how context shapes moral judgment. Murder is wrong, except when avenging your murdered family. Then it feels righteous. We constantly adjust moral frameworks based on loyalty, context, and emotion. The Dark Brotherhood exposes this flexibility in our ethical reasoning. The rebuilding of the Brotherhood with you as listener connects to themes of chosen family and purpose. You're not just part of an organization. You're rebuilding something sacred. You're honoring fallen family. This transforms continuation from mere murder into meaningful mission. Cicero, the Brotherhood's jester, presents his own psychological complexity. He's clearly mentally unstable, possibly dissociative. But he's also deeply faithful, completely devoted to the Night Mother and the old ways. His madness and devotion are intertwined. Some players find him annoying, others endearing, but he's never boring. The choice whether to kill or spare Cicero tests players. He attacked other family members. By Brotherhood code, he should die. But he was defending sacred traditions. He's also damaged, not fully responsible for his actions. What's just? What's merciful? The game doesn't tell you. Alduin, Paarthurnax, and difficult choices. The main questline culminates in difficult philosophical questions embodied by two dragons, Alduin and Paarthurnax. These choices cut to fundamental questions about justice, redemption, and revenge. Alduin is the World Eater, destined to destroy Nirn. He's pure antagonist, representing apocalyptic destruction. Defeating him is necessary and uncomplicated morally. He threatens all existence. This clarity is almost refreshing after Skyrim's usual moral ambiguity. But Paarthurnax complicates things. This ancient dragon helped humans long ago, teaching them Thu'um to fight Alduin. He's wise, philosophical, and helpful. But he was once Alduin's chief lieutenant, responsible for countless deaths. The Blades demand his death. He's a dragon, and dragons are enemies of mankind. This choice deeply divides players. Some refuse to kill Paarthurnax. He's changed, spent centuries meditating and helping. Past sins don't negate present goodness. Redemption is possible. Demanding his death for ancient crimes is unjust. Others side with the Blades. Paarthurnax admits he struggles daily against his nature. He could relapse any time. Can you trust a reformed mass murderer? Is it worth the risk? Justice might demand his death regardless of current behavior. There's no right answer, which is psychologically sophisticated design. The game forces confrontation with questions of justice and redemption without providing easy answers. Do people deserve death for unredeemable past actions? Can anyone truly change their fundamental nature? Should we forgive based on current behavior or judge based on past actions? Most players refuse to kill Paarthurnax, even at the cost of alienating the Blades. This suggests most people value redemption and present character over retributive justice. We want to believe people can change, that past actions don't permanently define someone. But the internal conflict is real. Players report genuinely struggling with this choice. They see both perspectives. This cognitive dissonance, understanding both sides without clear resolution, is uncomfortable but psychologically valuable. Not all moral questions have clear answers. The fact that refusing to kill Parthenax permanently locks you out of Blade's content creates stakes. Your choice has consequences. This makes the decision meaningful. You must prioritize values: redemption over vengeance, mercy over justice, or vice versa. Parthenax himself provides philosophical perspective on the struggle against one's nature. His meditations on whether what is better, to be born good or to overcome evil nature through great effort, is one of Skyrim's most memorable quotes. It encapsulates the redemption question perfectly. The journey's end and new beginnings. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration, let's reflect on what Skyrim teaches us about psychology, choice, and human nature. Skyrim is, ultimately, a mirror. It reflects our values, our fears, our desires. The choices we make reveal what matters to us. Do we value freedom or security, justice or mercy, power or wisdom, tradition or change? The game doesn't have right answers, but our choices answer these questions about ourselves. The game also teaches us about the burden and gift of freedom. Too much freedom can paralyze. Too little suffocates. Skyrim finds a middle ground, providing structure through quests and systems while leaving fundamental choices to players. This balance between guidance and freedom is psychologically optimal. We learn about moral complexity. Real ethical situations rarely have clear good and evil options. Usually, we choose between imperfect alternatives, balancing competing values, and accepting that every choice has costs. Skyrim normalizes this complexity rather than pretending morality is simple. The game demonstrates how context shapes everything. An action isn't good or evil in isolation. It depends on situation, motivation, consequence. This moral flexibility can be uncomfortable, but it reflects real ethical reasoning. We judge actions differently based on context, whether we admit it or not. Skyrim shows how we construct identity through choices. Your character becomes defined not by single decisions, but by patterns. Do you consistently help people, steal when convenient, solve problems with violence or dialogue? These patterns create coherent identity from countless small choices. The game validates different ways of being. Warriors, mages, thieves, scholars, craftspeople, explorers, all are viable. There's no single right way to exist in Skyrim, just as there's no single right way to live. This pluralism respects diverse values and approaches. We see how power affects us. Starting weak and vulnerable, we gain strength until we're nearly invincible. This progression lets us experience how power changes perspective and behavior. Does power corrupt, or does it reveal who we've always been? Skyrim lets us explore this question safely. The game reminds us that we're narrative creatures. We don't just play Skyrim, we create stories from our playthroughs. We remember dramatic moments, surprising discoveries, emotional connections. We shape experience into narrative because that's how humans make meaning. Through environmental storytelling and lore, Skyrim demonstrates our hunger for depth and context. We don't just want to do things. We want to understand why they matter, how they fit into larger stories. Context and meaning enhance every experience. The social dimension, shared experiences, community discussions, collaborative knowledge building shows we're fundamentally social beings. Even solitary play becomes social when we share stories and discoveries. We want to connect over common experiences and interests. Skyrim's longevity and modding community demonstrate human creativity. We don't just consume content, we transform, improve, personalize. We're not passive recipients, but active creators, always seeking to make things reflect our vision and values. The game's balance between accomplishment and relaxation shows we need both achievement and peace. Pure challenge exhausts. Pure ease bores. Skyrim offers both intense combat and dangerous dungeons, but also peaceful fishing, quiet collecting, simple home building. Life needs similar balance. Through countless hours in this frozen province, millions of players have learned about themselves. What brings them joy? What challenges them? What moral lines they won't cross? What stories resonate? What communities they want to belong to? These insights, born in fantasy, reveal truth about real human psychology. Perhaps most importantly, Skyrim reminds us that journey matters more than destination. The hundreds of hours spent exploring, choosing, building, discovering, these are valuable, regardless of whether you ever defeat Alduin or complete every quest. The experience itself is the point, not the achievements or endings. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll dream of snow-covered peaks and ancient Nordic ruins, of dragon shouts echoing through valleys, of cozy hearthfires and bustling market stalls, of choices made and paths taken through a vast, rich world that millions call a second home. In Skyrim, you're always welcome. The roads await your footsteps. The mountains challenge your climb. The mysteries invite your curiosity. And no matter how many times you return, there's always something new to discover. About the world, about games, about yourself. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Skyrim and the psychology behind your choices. May your roads lead to warm sands, your decisions reflect your deepest values, and your adventures continue bringing joy and discovery. Rest well, traveler. Skyrim will be there when you return.